Perfect. Okay. Should I share my screen now?
Yes, do.
Perfect. Okay.
So welcome everyone to Wednesdays at noon. So we have Natasha Breward, Pulse Manager, and Dr. MIichael Carew from Lab2Market. Natasha will present first, and give it over to you, Natasha.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I'm not on mute still. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Natasha Breward. I'm the manager of Pulse. We are Dalhousie's Health Innovation Sandbox. And today I'm going to speak a little bit about health innovation and some resources and opportunities available for students. So an overview of my presentation today, I'm going to talk about the Nova Scotia sandboxes and what we are. I'll talk a little bit more about Pulse. I'll then discuss health innovation and give some examples of some Halifax health-based startups. I'll then just conclude with an overview of some resources available to students and then a conclusion to wrap it all up. So I will start by discussing the Nova Scotia sandboxes. So there are 5 sandboxes at Dalhousie. There is Surge, which is the science sandbox, Shift Key Labs, which is the computer science sandbox, Pulse, obviously us, we are the health sandbox, IDEA is the engineering sandbox, and finally Cultivate is the agriculture sandbox up in Truro. There are 5 other sandboxes at other post-secondary institutions across the province as well. So in total, there is 10 of us across the province. We are all provincially funded. So because of that, we all have very similar goals and mandates as one another. We really aim to help students build skills. We want to inspire innovation and creative thinking. We want to encourage collaboration. And then finally, we're open to everybody. So I said I'm the health sandbox, but somebody, for instance, from computer science or engineering is welcome to join in on anything that we're doing. Similarly, if someone from health is interested in something that Shift Key Labs is doing, they're more than welcome to join in on that as well. And we're called sandboxes. The government established this name simply because sandboxes, they thought, are a place where kids go to kind of explore and meet new people and have fun. And the sandboxes really aim to encourage that as well within students. And if you want to know more about the sandboxes in general, there is a website there, nssandboxes.com, that kind of wraps everything up and explains it all in more detail as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about Pulse. We're the newest sandbox, both at Dal and in the province. We were just started in April 2020, so it's been about a year and a half. We're focused on health and life science innovation. So this could be med tech, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, nonprofit and community projects, potentially also policy changes related to health. So it's very broad and there's a lot of opportunity there as well. We aim to promote innovation and entrepreneurship in the province. And again, we aim to do that really particularly in the health and life sciences area. And finally, we're affiliated with the faculties of health, medicine, and dentistry. So we try and do programming and events within one of those 3 areas or encompassing all 3. So as I said, all of the sandboxes were all provincially funded. So we all have very similar objectives. So I'll just really briefly go over what our objectives are. And these objectives really go into when we're planning programming and events. We really like to highlight and ensure that students are being engaged in at least one of these objectives if they're involved in anything that we do. So the first one is networking. We really want to help students create meaningful networks and particularly help them to create networks for life. So, ideally, potentially if they're finished their degree or their schooling, maybe someone from a network that they met at a Pulse event would help them get a job or help them in their next steps or be a mentor to them potentially as well. Next, we have communication. So we want to help kind of hone the skill of communication, and this could be communication with peers, for example, within a team, or also communicating your ideas effectively, for example, with presentations, or if you do a pitch event or something like that. So we want to help students to refine those skills as well. Next, we have problem solving. So the ability to solve problems in a creative way, while also being able to suspend judgment of yourself and of others and having effective brainstorming strategies as well. Next, we have confidence. So the confidence to be able to talk about your ideas, and also the confidence to be a leader within a team as well. And the final two objectives, we have a human-centered approach to innovation. So this one is not as well known, especially to those, in the health and life sciences. But what that really means is when designing innovative ideas or coming up with solutions, you really want to think of the people or the end users first. And then finally, we have teamwork and collaboration. So being able to blend skills and abilities, respecting your teammates, active listening, conflict resolution. And also when we say collaboration, we mean collaboration within a team, but also collaboration between faculties and specialties and departments as well. So a little bit about Pulse participants. We really welcome anyone who wants to learn about health innovation or any student wanting experience outside of their academic or grad work. So if they want to try something new and gain some new skills. Anyone with an idea they want to grow. So if you have an innovative idea, no matter how big or how small it is, we would help you with that as well. And we really want to help students build soft skills, so such as teamwork, leadership, communication, and creativity. So all of our programming and events really aim to help students build or enhance those skills. So we've talked a lot about health innovation throughout the presentation so far, but I never really defined it. So this is from the World Health Organization, and it is they define health innovation as the development of new or improved products, technologies, services, or methods that overall improve health. So there's, again, it's very broad, and a lot of things can be fit into the realm of health innovation. Just to outline some of those, as I said in the previous slide, it can be a technology, it can be a device, it can be a pharmaceutical, a nonprofit, a policy change, or a service change as well. And just to go into those in a little bit more depth. So for example, med tech can be any health-related technology. A great example of this would be an app. For example, a cognitive behavioral therapy app would be a great example of med tech. A med device is anything used for the treatment, prevention, or diagnosis of a disease. This obviously requires a little bit more robust approval, as it requires Health Canada approval in order to be used. Next, we have pharmaceuticals. I think we all know what they are: prescription, non-prescription drugs. These obviously, have strict trials and regulations in place before they can be used by the public. These three are a little bit less well-known or less thought of when you say health innovation. The first one could be a nonprofit, for example. So a health-focused nonprofit or charity is a great example. I use the MS Society of Canada here. A policy innovation. So if it's a health-related policy change, would also be, an example of what health innovation could be. And then finally, we have a service. So innovating the way a certain service is done would be another example. And with that in mind, I wanted to share just some examples of some health-related Halifax startups, and I tried to get ones that had a Dalhousie connection as well. So the first one is Colorsmith Labs. So they create contact lenses for color blindness and to protect against blue light, similarly to how a lot of glasses do that now with all the computer use. And this was actually started by a Dalhousie chemistry grad, and she actually thought of this idea for a school project and just ran with it. So that is a really great example of how just an idea that she didn't really think could potentially go anywhere, she developed into a viable business now, and they're actually in Enovacore on Summer Street. Next, we have Novarest. So they're also in Enovacore, and they developed a device for sleep apnea. And this was started by a Dalhousie biomedical engineering graduate student as well. And then finally, we have Tranquility Online. So this is online cognitive behavioral therapy, and it was co-founded by a PhD student in psychology at Dalhousie as well. So these are all examples that were started by students or started shortly after they finished their programs, and they developed it into a successful company. And they're all still within Halifax as well. So with that in mind, I just want to emphasize that if you have an idea It doesn't have to be a physical product. It could be a service. It could be a policy change. Pulse can help, and they can help with mentorship, funding. If you need space to do some work, Pulse is able to help with all aspects of it. So with that in mind, I'm going to go over some other opportunities we have for students. So the first one would be funding. This is mainly if you do have an idea you want to grow. We have some residency funding to help start your idea. We're also a MItax approved incubator, so you could potentially get some MItax funding as well, in addition to some Pulse ones, and you would be able to start to grow your idea. Next, we have some internships. So we partner with startups in the Halifax area. This really helps to provide students with some additional work experience, especially if you're in grad school and you don't know if you want to go into academia or industry. We would be able to help provide some additional experience for you. And this you would obviously get paid because it is an internship, and you'd be able to put it on your resume or CV. And if you needed to, you would be provided with a reference as well. Next, we have a lot of programs for students, kind of varying in length. So we have the Knowledge Mobilization Challenge in partnership with Solutions for Kids in Pain. That really helps students to build or enhance their knowledge mobilization skills and training, and be able to use it in a practical way, because SKIP presents us with some challenges, and students are able to directly apply their new knowledge to that challenge. So it will have a really meaningful outcome. We have the Health Innovation Challenge. That's actually starting in January. We partnered with Olga Theo from the Faculty of Health. So she's providing us with a challenge related to healthy aging, and students over the course of the semester would get some training and some education around entrepreneurship. And then they would present their final idea at the end of the semester. And then finally, we have Dalbox Access. So that is a year long, so it's two semesters. And it's a challenge related to accessibility and being able to develop innovative solutions to accessibility challenges or accessibility barriers in Canada. So that is also a very exciting program we have going on as well. And then finally, we have kind of some one-off events. So things like hackathons. We have some seminar series of, alternative careers in health or professional development ones as well. And then potentially some pitch events and things like that as well. And I wanted to highlight this. So these were two students from Cape Breton. They were nursing students, and they participated in the Techstars Startup Weekend last May. And the theme of that was COVID-19. And Techstars, for those who don't know, is a national competition. It was online, and these students participated in it, and they actually won first place. And I wanted to highlight this because it really emphasizes the fact that students are people who are really on the ground floor of what these challenges are about. So this one being about COVID-19, these nursing students had a lot of knowledge in the area. So they were able to take that knowledge and directly apply it to a really viable solution. And I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people think that things like hackathons or these innovation and entrepreneurship type events are really for, business students or engineering students or computer science students, when in reality, especially if it's a health-based challenge, health and life science students would really excel in them, because they have a lot of background knowledge that those business or computer science students really would not have. So with that, Pulse has a lot of programming, and we really want to prepare students and student startups for future development. And that can come in one of three ways. We can help to connect student startups with further resources, which can look like more funding help, legal help, financial advice. So we try and help in that way. We can also help point students in the direction if they want more programming and more activities to be involved in. We can help them establish that as well. And finally, we really want to help students build skills, and particularly job skills that they'd be able to highlight when applying for future positions. And I just wanted to, again, highlight, there's a lot of also external opportunities and resources for students. Mike is going to go over some within DAL, but there are some external to DAL as well. There's a lot of events, policy hacks, hackathons, things like that go on. There are organizations such as Volta and InnovaCore that usually have health-related challenges as well, and they have a lot of opportunities for students or for new startups to be able to participate in them, potentially win some money, and also have some networking opportunities as well. And finally, there's a lot of organizations, if you need help with business planning, for example, that you can reach out to and seek some additional resources as well. So to wrap it all up here, in the ecosystem as a whole, there are a lot of opportunities for healthcare related startups in Halifax, and there's particularly a lot of opportunities and resources available for students. There really is a need and a want to get students engaged. So there are a lot of opportunities for students to be involved. We at the Sandboxes, we help to provide resources and guidance to those who want to gain more experience outside of their class or their grad work. And Pulse, we really aim to encourage and engage students in the health and life sciences with some programming and events specifically catered to those students. And to finish it off, I just put up this slide here. So these are all of the Sandboxes at Dal. I put on their Instagram and their Twitter. We tend to cross promote a lot. So we try and encourage collaboration and encourage students to participate in any and all events from any Sandboxes at Dal and even from outside of Dal as well. So if you wish to follow any of us or all of us, please feel free. And then finally, if you have any comments, any questions for me, you can email me at natasha.breward@dal.ca. You can visit our website at innovatepulse.com. And again, there is our Instagram and our Twitter there for you. I can stop sharing here. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you so much. So Mike, whenever you're ready.
All right. All right, is that up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here to talk today. To start off, I'd just like to kind of quickly introduce myself. I'm MIichael Carew. I'm the manager of the Lab2Market program. And as the question before, kind of where we all reside. So I'm under the Dal Innovates umbrella. And so we're running a number of programs under Dal Innovates, and I lead the Lab2Market program. So I have a PhD in physiology. I started my career off on the academic side of things, but was really interested in kind of the commercialization, the innovation entrepreneurship side. So I ended up doing an MBA as well at the University of Alberta. And through working in Alberta and moving on to PEI and more recently Dalhousie, I've had 6 years experience working with academic research with a focus on kind of helping commercialize that research. Just for a quick agenda of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to do kind of just an intro and kind of what is commercialization, how people can get started looking at commercialization, and then how that kind of relates to the programs we're running, and then some of the opportunities at Dalhousie with a focus on path innovation and Lab2Market. So I'd like to start off, and hopefully I can get some people turn their webcams on and maybe answer this, but I'd like to pose a question of kind of what's commercialization mean to you? And the reason I'm asking this is that everyone hears the term commercialization. Everyone has kind of an idea in their head of what it actually is, but everyone's answer differs a little bit. So I'm curious if anyone's willing to jump in and let me know what their idea of commercialization is.
Hi, it's Margot.
Hi, Margot.
I feel like it's taking an idea that's been and that's been moved into an innovation, like an app. I can only speak from my own perspective, and then creating that app and then using it in a commercial way to benefit society somehow. So either not necessarily selling it, but taking it and kind of expanding it into society to be of benefit.
Yep, absolutely. It's very perfectly accurate. Anyone else have a maybe slightly different kind of idea what commercialization means to them? Natasha, sorry to pick on you, but what does commercialization mean to you?
No worries. Yeah, mine was I would say it was very similar to Margot's in that my first thought would be being able to bring something to the masses is what my first thought was.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, and I know from looking at the website here, I think the kind of the implementation science and knowledge translation ideas are familiar with you. And so I'm not introducing any concepts here, but kind of from the research perspective, commercialization encompasses, I think, all of these areas. And ultimately, I think to me and kind of for researchers is getting your ideas into the hands of the people who need them. And I think this definition is important because it's not always about making money. It's not always about forming a business and kind of going on kind of the dark side, as some people say. I mean, a lot of researchers will see commercialization as a negative, and what they're really working towards is getting their ideas, getting their kind of what they're working on into the hands of people and benefiting society, benefiting patients, benefiting physicians, that type of thing. But no matter what you're doing and what angle you're taking, you're really getting your ideas into the hands of the people who need them. And I think it's kind of the follow-up question is why should we care? Why should anyone care about this? And I really enjoy talking to researchers, and especially basic researchers who say, my research doesn't have commercial potential, because after talking with them, you can always convince them that commercialization really applies to all research, no matter what you're working on. Commercialization and kind of figuring out kind of how it can be commercialized and how you can get it out to people is always going to be very important, because there's always a customer. The customer doesn't have to be someone who's kind of buying what you're selling, so to speak, but it can be someone that's consuming whatever you're doing. So even in basic research, if you're publishing a paper, whoever's reading that paper is getting information from that, and you're filling a need that they have for that information. And even funders as well. The funders have certain agendas, and so whatever you're researching, it might not be directly commercializable, but to them, it's fulfilling a need. And so commercialization really is identifying a problem that a customer has and providing a solution to that problem in its most basic form. And so I'd pose kind of a next question is where do you start in all of this? And with research, a lot of times people will start at kind of the technology, the device, the process or idea, and this ties into IP, regulatory, and everything. But I would challenge that, and that the place to start is always at a problem. If you're starting at a problem, that's where your solution comes in, and that's where everything else starts to come together. And so we're starting with kind of the problem forward. There's a lot of different factors to consider with this, and who experiences the problem. And so this kind of will be your customer, but there's a lot of levels to this, no matter what you're working on. And healthcare is notoriously complicated for this. And who experiencing the problem? It could be the patients, nurses, doctors, family members. At a higher level could be the administration, government, insurance companies. There's a lot of people that are potentially interacting or experiencing different versions of whatever problem you're addressing. Also looking at the severity of the problem is really important, figuring out kind of if it's a cost associated problem, if the problem is affecting patients or physicians' quality of life, is there health risk? Is it addressing a disease or a condition that poses a risk to people's lives? Is there a better way of treating that? And then also convenience, is there an easier, better, more efficient way of doing something? And finally, once you've kind of figured out these, is what solutions currently exist for the problem? This can be competitive solutions. Are there other companies that are developing similar things? But also a lot of times it's figuring out what the status quo is, and your competition can be what someone's been doing for the past 10 or 20 years, what they're familiar with. And so in that case, you really have to prove a benefit to get people to kind of change their habits. And so there's a lot of questions here, a lot of kind of uncertainty. And so figuring out where to start and answer these questions is the first step. And how you do that is start having conversations, pick up a phone, go to a hospital, try and start talking to people. And talking to these potential customers, potential groups is really the only way to really answer them. We see a lot of researchers that are kind of working in a bubble, assuming that there's certain issues, but until you actually talk to people experiencing those and validate it, you're really just you're doing that. You're working in a bubble. You're really uncertain of what the problems are and if your solution has validity. On top of this, figuring out where your customers are is very important. In Atlantic Canada, we're in kind of a unique spot that our market, our kind of our closest market, isn't very large. Atlantic Canadian, if you're launching a product in Atlantic Canada, if you're only launching Atlantic Canada, that's going to be very tricky because there's just not enough customers. And so we're encouraging companies to start looking globally. And when you start looking at customers, the US is a great place. It's the largest market in existence, and using it as kind of your first entry point can be very helpful. And I kind of alluded to this before with the types of customers, but figuring out the stakeholders of whatever you're using. And so we talk about patients or nurses or physicians as potentially being the user, but there's a lot of other people kind of in that whole buying process that whatever your solution is, you need to be factoring in and how all these different levels are going to be looking at whatever you're developing. Now, a lot of this really leads into customer discovery, and this is the focus of the Lab2Market and path innovation programming. And so I want to just kind of jump in and talk a little bit about customer discovery. And I think a lot of people, when they jump into customer discovery and they think about it, they think of calling up someone, telling them what they're working on, what their product is, and then having a conversation from there. And I'd like to kind of stop now and say that that's not the right way to do this. But you really want to focus on the customer. So if you're talking to a patient, you want to figure out what their problems are, what their needs are, how they're addressing those, and make the conversation all about them. And if possible, avoid telling them really what your technology even is. That could be a discussion for a much later time. And the reason for this, or the why, I'm going to answer with this picture. And it's an awful picture, I'm sorry, but I'm curious to know if anyone knows what I'm trying to get at with this picture. And Natasha, I know you know the answer, so I'll let you answer in a second if no one else does. But I'm just curious to see if anyone else can kind of figure out what I'm trying to get at here.
Well, I can try and answer. I know
Sure.
I'm a pediatric pain researcher, nurse, and a lot of our scales have been developed by adults to be used with children. And so in our research with Indigenous communities, we've learned that our pain scales are not helpful. First of all, because they've been developed by adults, and second of all, because they haven't been developed by Indigenous people. So it's kind of putting someone else's lens on really what the actual person you're trying to help. We haven't considered their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not the direct answer I was looking for, but that's actually very related and unexpected. So thank you for that. And Natasha, I know I see you're smiling. What are your thoughts on this picture?
Do you want me to see the answer?
I mean, if you know it.
Yes. Because no one wants to tell you that your baby is ugly or that your idea is not good.
So Natasha hit the nail on the head there with that. And the reason for this is kind of when it comes to customer discovery, particularly in Canada, people are very polite. People are very friendly. They're very, very nice. They don't want to hurt your feelings, or they don't want to tell you your baby's ugly. And in this case, your baby is your technology, your research, whatever you're working on. So if you have a conversation with someone, for the most part, if you say, here's what I'm working on, what do you think? Would you buy it? People are going to be very positive. They're going to be biased towards kind of affirming what you're working on and agreeing with you. And so that's the problem globally, but especially in Canada, because people here are generally so nice. And so this is why we focus in on kind of the problems or the needs of the customer, so we can avoid any biases and figure out what the real problems are or what they really think without kind of leading the conversation with what we're working on. So that's kind of it for my talk on customer discovery, but I want to talk a little bit more about kind of what's at DAL and where you can get started and kind of what opportunities there are. And so it's great to have Natasha presenting before, who's able to talk a little bit about the sandboxes and kind of that entry level point for a lot of companies. But under DAL Innovates, we've developed over the past few years a number of programs and are developing kind of a path that will capture companies or researchers at any stage that can get in and kind of lead into the next programs. So kind of on the same level of the sandboxes, we're running our Path Innovation program, which leads into the Lab2Market, and both of these are going to talk a little about a little bit more. We're also running the Ready to Launch Summer Accelerator, and then there's the Amera Idea Hub, and also CDL, and then larger ecosystem incubators and accelerators, which Natasha touched on as well. Since we've been kind of setting up these programs since kind of 2019, early 2020, we're starting to get a lot of success stories coming out of them. And I think one of the big ones is 3D Biofiber, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, which has come out of John Frampton's lab. This team did the Path Innovation program, and they did Ready to Launch, and they've been accepted into CDL as well, and they've just recently raised $700,000. So it's a really interesting company that's using a synthetic spider silk, and they're using it in medical devices and different things like that. So really, really great company. They brought on a great team, and it's going to be one to watch for sure. Also, another team that's gone through a lot of our programming is Myomar Molecular. So the founder, Dr. Rafaela Andrade, she's completing her postdoc at Dal, and she connected up and decided to take the Lab2Market program. Since then, she's gone through Path Innovation, Lab2Market, Ready to Launch, and has also gone through Amera Idea Hub and CDL. So if we go back to this graph here, she's actually gone through kind of all of our programming, and is kind of a proof of concept for starting out with a company at the very early and seeing where they can go within kind of the DAL Innovates ecosystem. So I'm going to move on now and talk about kind of what the programs are that we offer and why they should be kind of interesting for you. And so the first program, Path Innovation, it's a virtual workshop that takes place over 3 days. It's free to attend, and it's open to students, postdocs, faculty, support staff across all Atlantic Canada. We really want to let everyone who's interested attend this and work through kind of what they're working on and kind of learn some of the early skills around commercialization and entrepreneurship. Our instructor for this is Permjot Valia, who I'm not sure if you've been lucky enough to hear speak before. Very engaging speaker, lots of jokes, keeps it very interesting, and makes 4 hours a day over a 3-day workshop just fly by. Over the program, we cover kind of managing risk, developing minimum viable product, kind of the approach to funding, when you should seek certain types of funding, and then kind of the core piece, which leads into our other program, is an intro to the business model canvas that we use, and also looking at customer discovery. So if you're not familiar with the business model canvas, it is a 1-page way kind of to substitute almost doing a full business model. And if you're ready to do up a business model, it can be a 30, 40, 50-page document. Business model canvas is an easy way for kind of someone who doesn't have a lot of experience to kind of pick it up, learn as they go, and develop one sheet of paper with everything on your business. And so this is a great exercise to do for anyone starting a business, but it's also very handy if you're meeting with investors or want to be able to communicate your business, where you can take one sheet of paper, hand it to someone, and they can have kind of a really good idea of what you're doing and what you're working on. So for the people that are kind of our target market for Path Innovation is people who are unsure how to commercialize but have kind of an interest, or if they're unsure if they want to commercialize. So we've developed this program to lead into other programs, but also just be a safe place to kind of dip your feet in the water of commercialization. So it's a low commitment, it's 3 days of your time. You can really jump in and have some of kind of these conversations with fantastic instructors and team and figure out if this is something that you really want to pursue. So I'm going to move into the Lab2Market program right now. So Lab2Market program is about 2 years old now. We started our first cohort right around the same time everything shut down for COVID. So we did a health specific cohort in the March, right when kind of COVID was in the full swing of things. It's a national level program. So we have partners at Ryerson University, Memorial University, University of Manitoba, and we're looking at expanding to a few other universities at West as well. But the program at a high level provides funding and training to graduate students and faculty supervisors with a focus on assessing commercial viability through customer discovery. So the program provides $15,000 in funding, which goes directly towards the graduate student to kind of essentially buy their time out for 4 months, gives the team access to mentors, a fast network, and the big chunk of the program is talking to customers. So we task the teams with actually speaking to 100 customers over the duration of the program. As I mentioned, we've had Lab2Market going for a couple of years now, and so we've ran 3 cohorts. with our 4th cohort coming up in February. And in February, we're running a women in research cohort. So we've accepted 10 female researchers and entrepreneurs to take part in the program. So far, we've supported 55 researchers in the program from 15 universities all across Canada, as far as UBC. 11 companies have actually been spun out. We've represented 14 different faculties and awarded over $600,000 to the graduate students that have taken part in the program. We have pretty widespread from master's, PhD, postdoc, and not listed here, but there's even 1 or 2 undergraduate students. And we're still working on getting kind of the male-female representation to be equivalent. But what I can say is that the female teams that we've had have done incredibly well. They've outperformed the male counterparts significantly. So that's why we're running the female-only cohort in February to try and bring those numbers up. As far as who can apply to Lab2Market, teams compose of an entrepreneurial leads. This is a graduate student, postdoc, technical lead, and this is their graduate supervisor, and a business mentor. And this is someone that we actually pair teams up with. So we've developed a network of 60 or 70 mentors in Atlantic Canada with vast industry experience. And then so when teams enter the program, we actually connect them with one of those mentors who has kind of the most relevant experience to work with them through the program. The program is broken down into kind of 4 main components. So we do a month of pre-training. Over this period, we cover sessions on intellectual property, legal ownership. We do intros to customer discovery, interview skills, that type of thing. The program really kicks off with a 3-day kind of boot camp style workshop. Everything's run virtually. We cover mostly lean startup methodology, business model, intro to the business model canvas, and start kind of teaching teams how to do that primary market research, or how to get the most out of their 100 interviews. Things kind of break up at that point. Everyone kind of goes back and is working on their own for the most part. We do a 3-hour weekly class, but the majority of this time teams are actually breaking out and conducting the interviews. So it's a 6 to 8 weeks isn't a lot of time to get 100 interviews. So they're working pretty much full time on kind of getting out there, talking to people. The program ends with a 2-day closing workshop. So we get everyone together. Everyone kind of presents with their journey, where they've started, and kind of how they've managed to get where they are now, and talking about what comes next, and kind of where their roadmap is, what their plans are in the future. There's obviously a lot of benefits to taking part in a program like Lab2Market. I think the most obvious one is the $15,000 funding for the customer discovery. But even kind of below the surface of that, graduate students and faculty rarely get a time to kind of sit down and focus purely on the commercialization side of things. I know for graduate students, especially near the end of your degree, you're really focused on writing your thesis, finishing kind of before your funding runs out. And so this allows teams to kind of defer their funding and get paid $15,000 for 4 months and to really focus 100% on this. We have wealth of startup experts and mentors start of the program, so getting exposure to and input from them is really beneficial, and answering some of the critical business questions. And so a lot of teams will come in not really knowing who their target customers are, or what they value, and then also kind of providing them with answers to the questions that they don't know yet, or they don't know the questions to ask yet. And so channel strategies, like how do we actually sell this product, or revenue models, how do we make money from what we're doing, or how do we make it a sustainable model where we can get this out to as many people as possible. And so Lab2Market's been around for 2 years now, and so we're still kind of in our infancy stage. We're starting to get teams that are raising additional money, but we don't have the stats yet. But the program that we're kind of modeled after is the I-Core and the I-Cure program in the US and the UK respectively. And so these programs, they've been running for over 10 years now. They have 1,800 teams that have gone through. And what they've found is that teams that go through their programmings have about a 3-fold increased chance of securing funding or investment, and are able to reach that kind of go, no-go decision in a third of the time. This doesn't sound like much, but if you're talking on the scale of several years, if it takes 3 years to get to that go, no-go decision on your own, and you're able to take a program like this and cut that down to 1 year, that is significant. Saving 2 years of your life and letting you focus on other forms of research or actually get your business off the ground is huge. A big chunk of Lab2Market is obviously we're working with companies or companies that are going to be spinning out. And so we want to improve the companies coming out of the Atlantic Canadian universities, but that's really our secondary goal. Our primary goal is developing these skills for graduate students and faculty members. And so it's not just about more companies and better companies, but it's providing graduate students with a skill set, ultimately exposing graduate students to possible career paths outside of academia. So we've had a number of Lab2Market success stories up to this point, but I think one of the best that kind of demonstrates what Lab2Market is all about is a team of Carew, was developing a cosmeceutical product based on waste products from North Atlantic sea cucumber. And what she was looking at was these bioactive compounds for the use in the cosmetics industry. In the first couple of weeks in taking part in Lab2Market and kind of starting to talk to people, she realized there's a major trend in the industry that they really hadn't considered before, and that was that the cosmetics industry was going animal cruelty-free products. And so this is something that I should mention the sea cucumber is actually an animal despite its name, but this is something that they hadn't really considered. And for these companies hearing that there's a new kind of ingredient, but it was based from an animal product, that it was immediately just ended the conversation. There's nothing kind of beyond there. So her main target market, the way she was developing this, was really a no-go. However, in some of these conversations, it came up that this was actually a lot of interest from a nutraceutical or pharmaceutical perspective, because it's a bioactive compound, naturally occurring, and this was actually kind of a prime target for some of these industries. So within about 2 weeks of being in Lab2Market, she was able to completely pivot, change what she was working on, and go into a market with a lot more potential. And so this potentially saved her and her supervisor quite a bit of time, potentially quite a bit of money. And also, as for graduate students, being able to know that what you're researching and what you're developing is going to go beyond just your thesis and actually has a chance to kind of going out into the real world adds a lot of kind of motivation and good feeling for graduate students, and kind of knowing that there's going to be more to what you're working on. And so again, this brings everything back to kind of the DAL Innovates framework about the different programs we have. And so we've talked about most of these programs. So the Ready to Launch is a program that I'd be happy to share more information about if anyone is interested in, but it is more of a kind of a boots on the ground summer accelerator type thing, like really getting your business started, and then design to build and CDL. More information is available for those as well. So those are the slides that I have. One thing I'd like to say is that at DAL Innovates, we have a lot of programs that may or may not be a good fit for people. Even if you don't think you're a fit for any of our programs but have questions, we're more than happy to jump on a call, work through anything with you, or connect you with who the right person just to support you is. So we see ourselves as kind of that central point for connecting people and kind of in the Dalhousie ecosystem, and we're always happy to chat, provide advice that we can, or connect you with the people who can give you kind of the information that you're seeking. So again, thank you very much for the chance to come in here and talk today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to say thank you so much to both you and Natasha, but I know Julie and myself, I just learned about this program last year and sort of thinking, well, how can nursing and how can all of the health professions be a part of this? So again, your question, what is commercialization? And I really couldn't even figure out how my research could fit into that. So you've really given us a lot to think about and really great possibilities. So I'm just thinking that it could be up to us as a center to promote what you're doing and to, just be there, I think. And I really appreciated how you say we can contact you to explore, just even try to figure out if it's a possibility. So really helpful presentation. I just wanted to say thank you. So not a question, but it's making sense to me.
That's great. It's great to hear.
Yeah, I'll see if others have comments or questions.
Mike, Natasha, are you located within Dalhousie or part of a larger structure? Like a larger...
So I am within Dalhousie. So I report metrics and things like that to the province because that's how I'm funded, but I'm within Dalhousie. I'm actually located in the Burbage building and I'm affiliated with Dal, yeah.
Yep. And I'm affiliated as Dell with Dell as well. So we're under the Dell Innovates umbrella, which sits under the VPRI.
Okay. And I just wanted to backtrack just for a second, because one of your slides, Mike, had implementation science and then KT mobilization and then commercialization. And I wonder if you could just talk for a minute, because some people don't always understand the difference between implementation science, KT, and knowledge mobilization. Could you just give just a little bit of distinction between the implementation science and the KT and mobilization? What is the current language and understanding with those three concepts?
You know,
That's a big question.
I'm probably the wrong person to answer that. I don't want to get that one wrong. I'm not an expert in knowledge kind of translation or mobilization. I'm familiar with it kind of on a more of kind of a higher level. I'd be happy to take some time and answer that and get back to you. But I know there are a lot of overlaps, and it's one of those things. I think who you talk to's definition can differ as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's why I was asking. That's
yeah.
okay. No, it's not meant to put you on the spot, but I just wondered, you know, your interpretation of that. And so, just wondering if someone had something that they had developed. I'm a faculty member, so where would you start if you have a product? So Natasha's more the sandbox, but you're more the commercialization end of it. Is that it?
Yeah, and so I mean, I think with our programming, we kind of capture people at a number of different stages. And so with Lab2Market, kind of our target market is anyone that has an idea or kind of something that they can communicate that's not just written on a napkin, but it's something that they've identified a problem and they've identified a solution, and they don't have to have a prototype or anything yet, but just to be able to communicate that, they're like prime for Lab2Market. If you've developed a kind of a full product and you're ready to go, and kind of that might be a little bit beyond the customer discovery phase. I mean, customer discovery, I think, is always important, but if you are past that stage, then that might be something where ready to launch might make a little bit more sense, or even CDL, depending on the stage you're at. And so that's the type of thing that it would be great to just even have a kind of a one-on-one conversation, figure kind of where you're at, what your needs are, and then kind of like I was saying, we could recommend what program might make the most sense.
Okay, that's great. I'll just email you. What's your email?
So I don't know, can my email be shared out with the mailing list maybe, or I can put it in the chat here if that works.
Thank you.
Right, no problem.
So were there any other questions? Any comments? Well, thank you so much for presenting and coming and teaching us all about it. And thank you for sharing your emails so people can be in touch. And as I said, we've recorded this, so it'll be on our website, so you might hear from other people who will be watching it later. So thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
Thank
Thanks so much.
you.